So basically the idea is just to take you 5 minutes trying to explain your feeling about that from our fields, from architecture and urbanism. How do you think that this, let's say, huge crisis that it's related to the health issue with the coronavirus, but also with the weather and the climate and the economic effects that it had. What's your feeling? Do you think that we will come back to the same place, or there is something that is changing to stay?
Well, I mean, before the virus happened, we already had enough crisis. You know, we have an environmental crisis and a crisis of social inequality. And these two crises are beyond a problem. They are existential. And we can't avoid them. We couldn't avoid them. So this was enough already. With the virus, things become clearer and more difficult. I mean, clearer in the sense that the other crises seem to be, in a way, slightly more manageable all of a sudden, or at least put into some perspective. And also, the reasons that we didn't want to address these issues before, it's because we said it's unrealistic for us to change the way we live. So now we've changed the way we live for 6 months, and so we proved to ourselves the things that we imagined were inevitable and somehow unquestionable in the way that our society worked, now don't look quite so inevitable. So I think that we're living in a sort of limbo, you know. So the clock is turned off, and it's a moment when we can reflect. I think that the issue is going to be whether we find a solution quickly, in which case we probably resume back to our old ways quite quickly. Mm-hmm. Even though, even at this point, I think that the economic damage will be still enormous. However, we probably won't learn too many lessons, and we'll just try to recover as quickly as possible. However, more likely is that I'm not sure that there is going to be a magic solution in the next year. Normally these vaccinations take, 3 or 4 years to find. So, and I think within that time, then I think things would have changed enormously. And I don't know in what way, but certainly it's difficult for us to imagine just keeping everything in suspense. We've managed, I think all of us have managed to keep everything in suspense for 6 months. We all work at home, we all find provisional ways of dealing with things. And so far we can survive it. How long psychologically, in other ways, we can continue, I don't know. What this means for architecture, I also don't know.
And what do you think about the spaces related to our work, the spaces that we design in terms of our houses, the housing in general, and also and especially at the cities? Do you think that after that we will try to design in a different way? I mean, there are things that we have to change at home, things that we have to change in town.
Well, first of all, we should concentrate a bit more on making sure everybody does have a house. It's one thing for us to complain that some of the housing conditions are not so good, but the proportion of the population that does not have a stable place to live is enormous and totally unacceptable. So when people say stay at home, I mean, people like you and me are rather privileged, we stay at home. we have our books, we have our, what about if you don't have a home? I mean, what about if your home is provisional and temporary, whether, you know, whether you're living in a refugee camp or some shanty town or some very, so I think, you know, again, I would say that this pandemic is just asking much tougher questions of the problems we already have. I can't imagine, I mean, as I say, I think if we find a solution in the next few years, I don't think it will change our cities that much. We are social animals. We want to meet together.
Yeah.
I mean, we have a funny anecdotal. I have a funny anecdotal condition that 9 months ago I decided that in my village in Galicia I should reopen a bar which closed 27 years ago. So I've been working on this project to reopen the bar, and we reopened it on the weekend. How do you open a bar in a pandemic? You know, where everybody in the village wants to come, and you want everybody to come, but then you say come but don't come. You know, be here and really be here. Come in the small groups. But it's interesting how determined, of course, we are as a society to try to be together. Imagine a world without bars, you know, without common places. I mean, I think, you know, it's not worth contemplating at the moment. I don't think it's not. So we have to find methods by which we live with this situation. I can't imagine that we're all going to become permanently socially spaced. It's too late for our cities. I mean, what I can imagine is some phenomena developing, like more people maybe living in the countryside, more people working outside. I think there will be some permanent results from this. We're seeing in London a questioning of why are people traveling in every day to go to an office of 300 people, and now everyone's proved that they can do most of that at home. You know, if it takes you 1.5 hours in the morning to travel by train into the center of London, and you're, you know, in a very uninteresting place, and then you have to take 1.5 hours again home, you will find ways of not doing that. I think if you live 10 minutes from your 15 minutes, I mean, if, you know, because I think one thing that, you know, again, I would say, you know, because, you know, I've been editing Domus for the last 6 months. I've been trying to deal with a lot of these themes, which are not just about pandemic, but just about the way we organize ourselves. Clearly, it's, and again, I just keep repeating, it's accentuating issues which are already there. We were already thinking when we started our editors to talk about the issue of scale and how we have to rethink scale in terms of community, you know, local community, how things work, how things operate, how decisions are made, things like that. This is something which is interesting in Berlin about how people are really trying to defend their community and things like this. So now the pandemic has come, the issue of scale is even more relevant. Because if you live 15 minutes from your office, you can walk or you can take a bike or you can, so in Berlin, for instance, we can open our office again quite easily because no one is taking public transport, everybody's walking, and we have nice space. And 50% of the staff would prefer to be in the office. In London, where everybody has to travel in, it's a little bit more difficult. People are more reluctant to go. So I think all this is doing is exposing all of the problems we already had.
Yeah, especially in huge cities like London or Mexico City.